Committee will come to order. Pursuant to notice, I now call up the bill H.R. 1828, the Syria Accountability and Lebanese Sovereignty Restoration Act of 2003. For purposes of markup, and move its favorable recommendation to the House. Without objection, the bill will be considered as read, open for amendment at any point, and the Chair recognizes the Honorable Ileana Ros-Lehtinen, Chair of the Subcommittee on the Middle East and Central Asia, to explain the bill.
The Syria Accountability and the Lebanese Sovereignty Restoration Act offers the administration the right mechanism to press the Syrian regime to immediately halt its destructive policies. This act bans all military and dual-use exports to Syria. It requires the imposition of 2 or more of the wide range of sanctions provided for in the bill. It includes a presidential waiver on the latter sanctions if it is vital to the national security of the United States. It authorizes the provision of assistance to Syria only if the President certifies, among other requirements, that Syria is not providing support for international terrorists, that it has withdrawn all military, security, and intelligence personnel from Lebanon, that it has stopped its development and deployment of ballistic missiles, and that it has ceased its weapons of mass destruction program. The bill also has a requirement calling on the Secretary of State to report on the progress made by Syria on withdrawal from Lebanon, the connections between Syrian-sponsored and supported terrorists or terrorist groups to the 9/11 attacks, and on U.S. efforts against Hezbollah.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Ackerman, for purposes of an amendment.
I have an amendment at the desk, Mr. Chairman.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment offered by Mr. Ackerman, page 13, line 20.
Without objection, further reading of the amendment is dispensed with. The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes in support of his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My amendment simply adds an additional sense of Congress provision that the President should not nominate an ambassador to Syria, nor accept the credentials of any proposed ambassador to the United States appointed by the government of Syria until such time as Syria permanently breaks its ties with terrorism, seeks its pursuit of materials and technology for weapons of mass destruction, and ends its opposition to the United States and coalition reconstruction efforts in Iraq and withdraws its armed forces from Lebanon. I urge all of our colleagues to support this amendment.
The Chair recognizes himself for 5 minutes. I appreciate the spirit in which the amendment is offered by Mr. Ackerman. It is certainly well-intentioned, and it is in keeping with the spirit of the entire legislation. I just think it is depriving the administration, the State Department, the people who would actively negotiate with Syria. It is limiting their flexibility by denying the right to the President to nominate an ambassador. In the Middle East, you get things done through personal contact, and the only way to reach past the bureaucracy in Syria is through an ambassador.
Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to speak against the amendment, but also about the bill in general. I certainly agree with the chairman's comments on the need to allow the President to have the ability to appoint an ambassador, and I think he made some very, very good points. But also think that all the points that he made also could apply to the bill, and actually are the reasons why I opposed the bill, because I think we're going in the opposite direction. And I see that some people see this as just one step too far, and I agree, and I will vote against the amendment. But I would hope that we reconsider the whole piece of legislation, because this looks like it's deja vu all over again. It looks like we're just taking on another problem for ourselves. We have nation building going on in Afghanistan, which now is the opium capital of the world once again. We're in Iraq begging and pleading for others to come in and help us and fund it, and it's a greater burden to the American taxpayer. At the same time, now we're in a way, many ways, threatening the Syrians to do exactly as we say or else, and I just don't think that's a good way to get along. Now, it isn't that the Syrians are an ideal nation, but I understand they were helpful to the United States. Matter of fact, just yesterday on AP services, Syria claims, and this is supported by U.S. intelligence, that Damascus has provided the United States with valuable assistance in countering terrorism. The Syrians have in custody Mohammed Zamar, believed to have been the recruiter for the hijackers, and that quite a few people that they've had on a list have ended up in U.S. custody. So it's not like it's all black and white, that they have not been helpful at all. I do question one of the number 8 under the statement of policy as being something that may be absolutely true, but you're going to have trouble convincing the people of this country. It says Syria will be held Syria's acquisition of weapons of mass destruction poses a threat to the national security interests of the United States. I mean, there we go. Do they really have them, and who's going to believe it? Are they really a threat to the security of the United States? I mean, there's a little bit of credibility there that doesn't really exist. And it just looks like we're looking for more trouble. Now, all these groups are bad groups, but not one of those groups have, in the last 20 years, directed any attack toward the United States. So I see this as a dangerous move. I see this as inviting trouble, that these groups who have not targeted the United States, these are not the Al-Qaeda, these are other groups. So we're literally saying to them, we're going to come and get you, and maybe then the United States and the U.S. interests around the world will become the direct target. I just do not see how we can take on another nation which will end up probably in nation building right before we go into Iran. When will it ever end? In other ways, this confirms some of the deepest suspicions of the Arab Muslim world. They suspect us for what our motives are and our intentions are, and they see this as a jihad. And here we are going into another country, another Muslim country, and I do not see how it will serve our interests. And like the chairman pointed out, that you go too far if you don't even have a dialogue. I would say this is getting awfully close to closing the dialogue with Syria, and these sanctions, just one more affront to our relationship with them. So I know the motivations are good, very good, and I know there's a lot of bad people over there, but in our self-interest, I think we ought not to pass this legislation, and that we certainly should oppose the amendment dealing with the ambassador.
Will the gentleman yield?
I'll be glad to yield.
Yes. You say that the Syrians haven't caused the death of our service people since 20 years ago in '83. But it is with the complicity of the Syrian government that Syrian, quote, volunteers and other militants from the Arab world
Okay, I'd like to reclaim my time because
and are killing our people in Iraq.
Well, that may or may not be true, but to assume that the Syrian government has absolutely control of those borders is like assuming Pakistan has absolute control of their borders, and they're our allies, and Osama bin Laden is probably in Pakistan. So I don't think that argument holds up, but I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Pennsylvania, Mr. Hofel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the Ackerman amendment. I support the Ross-Layton substitute.
The question occurs on the Ackerman amendment, and the gentlelady Laura will call the roll.
Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul votes no. On this vote, there are 10 ayes and 22 nays.
And the amendment is not agreed to. The chair recognizes Mr. Wexler for purposes of an amendment. And the question occurs now on the motion to report the bill, H.R. 1828, favorably as amended, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Tancredo votes yes. Mr. Paul. Mr. Paul votes no.
Now what kind of a count have we got?
On this vote, there are 33 yeses and 2 noes.
The ayes have it. The motion report is favorably The motion to report favorably is adopted, and without objection, the chairman is authorized to move to go to conference pursuant to House Rule 20, and without objection, the staff is directed to make any technical and conforming changes, and the chair thanks everyone for their attendance. The committee stands adjourned.
Great job, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you.